So, as I said, I see letting go as part of just about every spiritual tradition in one way or another, whether it's not being attached to your actions or the outcome of your actions, or letting go of desires, or surrendering to a higher power in some traditions, or devotion, just simply accepting the present moment, letting go of ego, forgiveness. Forgiveness is about letting go. It just comes up again and again and again. And one teacher, I think it was a Buddhist teacher, once said, the whole of the world's religions can be summed up in two words. You've got it, let go. Why is letting go so important? I think it limits our perception. When we've got a fixed view, we can be stuck in that. It can cloud our minds, cloud our thinking. It can lead to unnecessary emotions. I think most of all, I mean, in the most general sense, holding on to something leads to suffering. And that's what the Buddha saw. And the value, why should we let go then, is really to have the opposite. When we let go, the mind relaxes, we have more energy, we begin to see things as they are rather than through some lens of judgment or grievance. We become more open to others, more open to love, to our hearts. And we're more at peace. I mean, that's probably the ultimate thing. What we all want ultimately is to be at peace. And the more we let go, the more at peace we can be. One of my favorite quotes is from a Thai Buddhist teacher, Ajahn Chah, who said, if you let go a little, you will have a little peace. If you let go a lot, you will have a lot of peace. If you let go completely, you'll have complete peace. So that's really, in a sense, the background to what we're going to be looking at here. And there's many areas in which we can let go, whether it's letting go of fixed beliefs, whether it's religious beliefs, political beliefs, beliefs about reality, beliefs about self. When we hold on to a belief, it tends to limit us to what we can see. Letting go of being right. I know that's something that's I'm always working on. Like when I've got an idea, I like to think I'm right, but like letting go of being right is something. Letting go of what's happened in the past, whether it's the good things or the bad things, the things we wish didn't happen. Letting go of what's going to happen in the future, our expectations, because that can so much catch us out. If we have a strong idea of what should happen and it doesn't happen, that can, if we don't let go of that, that can lead us to get upset and things. Letting go of ego, as I said, is a really fundamental thing. Judgments, grievances, our assumptions about how things should be. These are all areas in life where we're often either called to let go, or it would be good if we could let go. I'm not saying that we should let go of everything at all, obviously, but where we need to let go, that's what I want to be looking at. Where there is a need to let go, how can we facilitate that? How can we make it easier? And in the past, I think in some of the religions, letting go has been seen as getting rid of something. If you're attached to possessions, you do without possessions. If you're attached to desires, you get rid of your desires. If you're attached to relationships, you become celibate or whatever. If you're attached to pleasure, you lead a very austere life. But it's not about changing the world. It's about letting go of our attachment to how things should be. And this, as I said, is what the Buddha saw in his own journey. As some of you may know, just to really briefly recount, he was born a rich prince. He had everything he could need, and he had no reason to suffer physically or in any way, but he found himself still suffering mentally, emotionally. And so he left home, set out on a 6-year journey through the forest, trying to discover how to end suffering, and trained with the best teachers of the time. But a lot of those teachers were still in that sort of idea of ritual and sacrifice as the way to liberation. And he tried the austere path and nearly starved himself to death. And then realized in his final meditation that it was about clinging. To end suffering, you had to end clinging, let go of clinging. And those were what he called the Four Noble Truths. When he came out of his meditation, he went off to meet his fellows who'd been also studying with him. And he described what he'd seen as four basic truths. The first was the truth that we all suffer, but not that we all suffer in some object, this pain or something like that. But basically, the word he used, dukkha, means not being at ease. That's what the word means, not being content. And I think when we see suffering, when we translate suffering as not being content with things, then I think we can see why he said, we are all suffering most of the time. Most of the time we have some or other discontent going on. And the second truth he saw was that the cause of this discontent is that we cling. We hold on to how we think things should be, very basically. And the third noble truth was basically the end of clinging, which is the word nirodha, which is one translation of that is letting go. He saw letting go was the key, and then the fourth noble truth was part of what happens, the way of letting go. What happens as you let go, the path to liberation. So, what we're letting go of is we're not letting go of things, but in a way, we're not letting go of our thoughts or feelings either, which could also be thought of as things in the mind. What we're letting go of ultimately is a way of seeing things, what psychologists call a mindset. It's like we look at the world through lenses the whole time, but we don't actually see the lens. I mean, if you're wearing rose-tinted spectacles, you see the world, it's got a rosy color to it. You don't see the lens itself through which you're seeing it. And I think it's the same with our minds. We all have fixed views about things, but we don't see that. We don't see that. We see the thoughts that come, the emotions that come, how we behave, etc. So really letting go is about letting go of a way of seeing things, which isn't a thing in itself. It's the way of seeing things. And that's why I call the book Letting Go of Nothing. It's a sort of play on words. It's letting go of no thing. We're not letting go of things, whether they're physical things or mental things. We're letting go of our way of seeing things. So ultimately what we're talking about is basically a change of mind, seeing things in a different way. Now, I think many of you probably found from time to time, letting go is not easy. We find it hard to do. And people might say, when something difficult is going on, they might say, just let go, or we might say, I've tried to let go, but I just can't do it. And I think part of the reason for this is we treat letting go as something to do, but really you can't do letting go. And the way I see it is we're already doing too much with the holding on, whatever we're holding on to, whatever we're clinging to. So the letting go is much more an undoing of the holding on. And I like to draw an analogy. If you're holding on to a rock, if you're holding on to some rock in the air, then it takes energy. The muscles are holding it. And so to let go, we become aware of the muscles, become aware of the tension, and we begin to release our grip. And that's the approach I take with letting go, is we need to release the mental grip. We need to relax the mind. And so it's not about changing our mind. As I said, that's why one of the aspects of letting go I see is letting be, letting things be, which of course, the Beatles made famous in their song, Let It Be. But it's not just the Beatles who saw that. Find it in many other traditions, the idea that part of letting go is letting things be, allowing them to be as they are. It is part of it. It's not just saying everything's okay, but it's about letting our experience in the moment be as it is. It's accepting our experience in the present moment. And that's something, you can't really change that at all. It is what it is. When people hear, you've got to accept things as they are, they think sometimes, well, does that mean, I've got to accept injustice in the world, I've got to accept cruelty, I've got to accept my partner's lying, whatever it is. Not at all. I mean, there's many, many, many things we're called upon to change in the world, many things. and we each play our part. So it's not about accepting situations, but it's basically accepting our experience in the present moment. Whatever our experience is, that's what it is. Accepting it rather than resisting it or wishing it weren't there. So as we see as we go through this, letting be is an important part of it. But before that, I see the first step is actually letting in our experience fully. And often we actually don't really know what we're fully feeling, what we're fully experiencing. And sometimes we don't even want to let it in because it seems the opposite from what we want. We want to be free from, say, some uncomfortable emotion. And so we don't want to let it in. We tend to push it away. But I see letting in as a really important first step. It's really a question of curiosity, of being open to our experience in the moment, whatever it is, just like being interested, like what's actually going on here. So that's the letting in, is like opening up to actually feel what is going on here. And then once you've allowed it in, letting it be. And as I say, I'll show how this works when we come to various aspects of letting go. But just a very simple example is the body. Something I think we can all relate to is when we have some discomfort in the body, some mild pain or something. If we open up to it, if we open up to the experience, what it's actually like, how it feels, then very often we can find it begins to sort of soften and dissolve. Well, first of all, we begin to discover more about it. We can feel what is there, and then it tends to change when we open up to it. And this is, some of you may a long time ago have done EST, Bert Earhart's EST program, which then became other programs. And one of the exercises I remember he did there was to ask people if they had some pain, a headache or something. He'd say, okay, first of all, rate this on a scale of 1 to 10, how bad it is. And then he'd say, what color is it? How much pressure is there? What shape is it? Is there a sense of texture to it? He'd ask all these questions about the pain. And then he'd say, again, rate it on a scale of 1 to 10. And very often they find it will go down. He'd keep on repeating the process. What shape is it? What color is it? Et cetera, et cetera. And very often, I know I would do this myself, it would actually end up completely disappearing. And what he was doing there, although he didn't phrase it in these terms, he was actually letting the experience in and being curious as to what it's about. So really getting to become much more familiar, almost becoming friends with the experience of pain. And when we do that, if it's something where the holding on is what's making it, keeping it there, then it just often just begins to, as I say, dissolve and fade away. And I think part of that also is a phrase which is often bandied around, which is pain is inevitable, suffering is optional. I expect many of you heard that. And what that means is, yes, there's discomforts, there's pains, and this applies also whether it's not just physical things, emotional pains, whatever. They're there. The suffering comes from our resistance to it, our not accepting it. And so it's like there's two things going on. There's the pain, whatever it is, and then there's the resistance to it, the non-acceptance of it. And that is what creates the suffering, the holding on to this shouldn't be there. I don't want to be feeling this. And as we begin to sort of let go of the resistance, accept it, then that the suffering aspect decreases. Then we can just be more aware of what is actually there in terms of the discomfort or whatever. So that's the basic principle that I want to explore is, let's say, letting in and letting be. And in this first session, I want to look at that in terms of letting go of uncomfortable emotions, emotions that we wish we could let go of, something that's going on, some maybe some anger or grievance or something that we want to let go of. I'm not saying, we should do this with all emotions, but sometimes we feel we're stuck in something, and so we want to find a way to let go of it. And those of you who know me know I love to go back to the root meanings of words, and emotion comes from the Latin, which is e motare, and the prefix e means to go out. And so e motare, it initially meant to stir up, a stirring up of the mind, which emotions certainly are. They stir up the mind. But also, more literally, it means to move out. E motare means to move out. And behind any emotion, when you look at it, there's an impulse to act in some way. I mean, if you're feeling angry, you might feel your teeth clenching, your hands clenching, or whatever. You want to hit somebody. That's that impulse to act. I mean, what we do in our society, of course, is we don't follow the impulse. We notice it's there. We don't follow it normally. Sometimes we do. Or if there's fear, then the impulse to act might be to run away. You might feel some sort of quivering in the body, that fear, wanting to run away. And sometimes the sensation isn't even sort of physical in a sense. It's more what I call in the subtle body. It's something we feel, although there may not actually be anything going on in the real body, the physical body, but there's something underneath which has that quality of a feeling. So, for example, if you feel shame, then the feeling in the body might be sort of like turning inwards, like wanting to go and hide away. That's the impulse that there's, like the feeling of wanting to hide away. Or sadness, there may not be anything physically you feel in the body, except there may be that subtler feeling, a sort of emptiness in the heart and emptiness in the chest, or whatever it is. I'm not saying every time you feel sadness, that's what it is. I'm just giving an example. That's how it might feel. I know that's, when I was exploring it once, that's how it felt to me. It was like this sense of emptiness in the chest was how sadness manifested. So what I'm saying is, there's always, with any emotion, there's always some felt sense going on, whether it's a real thing like clenched fists or something much subtler. And that's why I think, we call emotions feelings, because there is a feeling, actual feeling that goes along with it. So it's not just a coincidence that we use the words for emotions and for a feeling in the body. They're deeply connected. But there's a second aspect of an emotion, and that is there's always some story there as well. And by story, I mean something we are telling ourselves about what is going on. So with anger, for example, the story might be, this person has upset my plans, the way they behaved isn't what I needed, they should have done better. There's some story going on. Something about the past, usually there, some story about the past. With fear, there's usually some story about the future. If this happens, then I'm going to be disadvantaged, I won't be able to do what I want to do, etc. Or it's going to hurt me, I'm going to suffer in some way. So there's some story about what's going to happen in the future. And even with, positive emotions, like if you're feeling romantically attracted to somebody, you'll notice there's very often a story there behind it about how this person is wonderful, they think like you do, whatever it is. They have a good sense of humor, you're physically attracted to them, whatever it is. There's a positive story, but there's always these two things together. In fact, as an example, just try to feel any emotion at all, without some reference to the past or the future. If you're totally in the present moment, not referring to the past or future, can you experience an emotion? It's something to explore for yourself. We won't do it now, but it's an interesting thing to explore, is can you actually have an emotion without having some story or other about what has happened or what might happen. And so in an emotion, these two things are sort of wrapped up together. And one analogy I've heard, which I find very sort of pertinent, is imagine you've got a ball which is contained of string. It's got white string and red string, and it's all wrapped up in a ball. And what you see at a distance is a pink ball. But when you examine it, you see there's white string and there's red string all round each other. And it's the same with emotions. You might just feel, oh, this is what I'm feeling. I'm feeling sad or something, or I'm feeling angry. When you look at it closely, you find there's these two aspects. There's there's what's happening in the body or the felt sense, and there's what's happening in your mind, the story about it. So when we come to letting go of uncomfortable emotions, we can apply this process of letting in and letting be to both aspects of it. We might go for first of all, the feeling side, which is about being curious as to what is the actual feeling in the body, turning our attention to the body. So just noticing, if it's fear, rather than being caught up in the whole story of what might happen, but just pausing and noticing what am I actually experiencing in the body? This thing of being curious and letting it in and really feeling it. It's not just noticing, oh, I notice there's a sense of quivering or something. It's not just noticing it. It's actually really letting it in, being curious as to what it actually feels like. So you actually go, okay, oh, there's this bit. Oh, I see it. It's feeling this. So you're really allowing in the actual feeling in the body connected with an emotion. And then, as I said, not trying to change it as it becomes more apparent what the actual sensation is, just allowing it to be there. And often you find things then begin to shift a bit. I know in one of my meditation groups once, somebody came in, and he actually came into the wrong group. He was going for a different class, but he got the day wrong. He came to the right room, but he got the day wrong. So he walked into my meditation group. But he decided to stay. And then he was talking about how he was suffering a lot of grief because a close family member had died about 3 months ago, and he was just still grieving, and he couldn't get over the grief. He couldn't let go of it. And so I suggested in the meditation, he just really let in what was happening in the body, which he hadn't really done. And he said afterwards, he noticed, a real sad feeling in his heart, but he noticed himself weeping and other sensations. But he also noticed he just felt a lot freer from it, from just having let in what was actually going on. So that's the first thing with letting go of emotions, is actually to allow in what is actually happening there in the body, to allow that in. But then also the other side is allowing in the story. What are we actually telling ourselves? And the story's there for a good reason. If you're angry with somebody, the story might be they shouldn't have done this, whatever it was. They interfered with my plans, or whatever it is. They're making me suffer something. And, there's a validity to the story insofar as, they did behave this way and it wasn't comfortable for you. But then as we let in the story, we begin to also go deep and say, well, how true is this? There's an element of truth to it, but maybe there's another side to it. Maybe we can actually begin to see things differently. What was happening to them? Why did they behave this way? What was going on for them? What could have caused them to act like this? So if we do this, we let the story in and allowing it to be there, but then we can begin to make this shift of just, maybe we can see it in a different way. Maybe we can see this through their eyes more. And that again can help us begin to let go of that story and begin to let go of the feeling of what if you do this, you'll find very often, if you put yourself in someone else's shoes, you find the anger begins to dissipate some. You're beginning to let it go. But there's another aspect, which is, I touched on before, resistance. And because uncomfortable emotions are, by their very nature, uncomfortable, we often don't want to experience them. We push them away, push them to the back of our mind, or ignore them, and possibly feel, with anger, if I really let the anger in, I'd explode and hit somebody. Or if it's sadness, if I really let the sadness in, I'd burst out sobbing or something. So maybe for those reasons we keep it at bay, or maybe just because it's uncomfortable, we keep it suppressed or ignore it. We want to keep it under control. And so when that's happening, there's actually two things going on. There's the emotion, the uncomfortable emotion, and then there's the actual resistance to it. And what I found is the first thing to do is to let go of the resistance to it, let go of the resistance, because that's what's stopping us allowing it in. So before we can really allow the feelings in, we have to work with the resistance itself. And again, I find applying the same principles of letting go, which is, first of all, noticing, is there some sense of resistance here? Is there some feeling in the body that's connected with me resisting this emotion? And usually there is, and it can be a sort of sense of tightness or whatever it is, or that pushing away. But noticing how the resistance itself feels. And what I find is, as I let in that feeling of resistance, let that in first of all, it nearly always begins to soften and dissolve, and often just dissolve away completely. And then it's much easier to allow the actual emotion in more. So I just offer this to you as something that I found really valuable as a principle. When there is something uncomfortable, whatever it is that you want to work with in some way or another, the first thing to do is notice if there's any resistance to the experience, and then do this process of letting in and letting be to the experience of resistance itself. And then when the resistance begins to drop away, then you can be with the whatever it is you want to work with. It's that same principle I touched on before. The pain is inevitable, the suffering is optional. So by letting go of the resistance, we're letting go of that half, and then come back to whatever it is we want to work with. So what I want to do just briefly today is actually just a little exercise before we move into questions and dialogue about this. Just for each of us, a little exercise, really just experiencing this process of letting go for ourselves. And do this as a very simple meditation. So I invite you all to close your eyes. It's not necessary, but I find, generally we can be more internal if we close our eyes. We're not so distracted by things. And then just take a few deeper breaths and just allowing your body to relax. Always find this is very important first step. It's just allowing our body to relax. Just if you notice any tensions, just first of all allowing them to be there, but also just allowing them to soften as well. And then just noticing what is there, just allowing your experience in the moment to just be as it is, just accepting the moment. And there's probably various things you notice. It could be sounds around you, sound of my voice, different sensations in the body, maybe just the sensation of breathing. And you'll probably notice thoughts popping in, popping out. But for this practice, we're just allowing it just to be as it is, whatever is there, not trying to change it, not wishing it weren't there, not resisting it. We're just exploring how it is to just, in this moment, allow our experience to be as it is, just accepting it as it is in the moment. Not trying to get anywhere or change anything. Almost with the body, just being curious what's there. Maybe is there something you haven't noticed? Then just as you do this, just allowing things to be as they are, just letting the experience in and letting it be. Just notice if there's any sense of how that feels to be doing that. I don't mean in the body so much, but more like, is there a greater sense of ease or relief or openness or lightness of being, relaxation? Just notice if there is. There may not be, but sometimes you can notice, when I just pause, stop trying to do anything particular, think about anything particular, when I just allow things to be as they are, often what comes is a sense of, I just call it a greater sense of ease. And if there is, whatever it might be, just also allow that to be there. That's part of the present moment. Just noticing that as well, include that as part of what is there in the moment. In a way, just savoring how it feels to be more present. And then when you're ready, just gently in your own time, no rush, just beginning to open your eyes a little bit, little bit of light in, just gently coming back to being here in this group.